Hello, this is Olga Jevtich. I'm Miss Virginia Senior America 2003. This is Fashion Notes. You are here for a big treat. As you know, we always have very interesting guests here. I handpicked each guest because of the special talents. Today we have a very interesting lady who is a glass artist. We had a glass artist before, and they all have different techniques. So I have to ask her very many questions because I am not familiar how to make the glass. I know how to enjoy, and this is Fashion Notes. So this is the fashion for the house. So I'm going to introduce her. Her name is Emily Pelusic. She's here with us today, and she's going to tell us all about her art. As you can see, we are surrounded with different things. She just showed me also that she made the necklaces for herself, which are very interesting, and she explained to me there's some kind of new material that she was using, which I understand, but she's going to tell us all about. As you can see, we have a painting, we have a bowl, and also she's going to tell us, how to cut the glass, and also her secret technique, maybe. And I would like to introduce you. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you could come. Thank you very, very much. And, that was such a, presentation here we have. For display. As you can see, everything is made from glass. I don't know what kind of glass she's using. I have to ask her that. And also other questions, because, we have to learn more about glass making. And she told me she is working with, stained glass. She started like 35 years ago. And then she moved, every artist has something new idea all the time, and she moved from one project to another. So today she, is going to show us all her creation, what she's doing from small to big and in between. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you could come and show us, all your art. And, what background do you have, when you started? Did you start something, little by little, learn, and then got interested, and then you perfected your art, of course?
First, thank you very much, Olga, for having me on the show. It's really an honor to meet you and to be on your show as well.
Thank you.
My background, I grew up in Kentucky, and although I grew up in the suburbs, I always liked being out in the woods. And my father was from a little town called Nonsuch, Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
And that, as we talk later in terms of what inspires me, you'll find that that's kind of an important part of my inspiration.
Yeah, I can see on your paintings. Actually, they're not paintings, but they are. I don't know how you call them because they're made of glass. They're not painted, but made of glass, which is a very complicated process. And she's going to tell us how she's doing it. It's very interesting and time-consuming, of course.
Yes, my glass experience started about 35 years ago. I started making stained glass.
Uh-huh.
Then I found I didn't really like soldering the glass very much, so I started making mosaics.
Uh-huh.
And then probably 10 or 15 years ago, I bought a kiln for the first time. And a kiln is essentially a kind of an oven on steroids. It's
very high temperature.
It's very high temperatures.
Uh-huh.
My kilns can go up to about 2,000 degrees.
Ooh.
Just in comparison, most baking is done around 400 degrees. You clean your oven around 700 degrees. So you can see this is really hot.
Do you put, for example, the glass in before you turn it on? Because, if it's too hot, how do you handle? Do you have a special glass, special equipment to put the, piece of glass in the kiln?
Generally speaking, you do put the glass in the kiln before you turn it on.
Okay, because it's such a high temperature. I was wondering, how do you do it?
Having said that, though, you can actually work with the glass at high temperature. We've taken the glass up to 1,200 degrees before, then opened the kiln, and with special gloves that are lined with asbestos and other things and Kevlar, you can actually take the glass out and move it around and shape the glass.
Ooh. Because when it's warm, you can shape it the way you want to.
Right.
For example, you have this vase which is a irregular shape, and probably this is what you did. When it was in the kiln, you know, you just play around and, you know, put the shape you wanted to. Oh, wow.
Well, we also have a lot of molds that are made out of ceramic, so sometimes we use molds to shape the glass, which means you don't have to do it by hand. Glass blowers are used to working with really hot glass because whenever they're blowing it and they're turning it.
I saw the demonstration like that. I was fascinated with that. How do they do?
Right. So glass is actually it's not really a solid. It's a liquid that at room temperature is a solid. So when you heat it up to temperatures around 1500 degrees, it starts getting viscous. Kind of by 1700 degrees, it's kind of like honey.
Wow.
And so there are a lot of things that you can do when it gets up to this temperature. For one, you can take a lot of different disparate pieces of glass and fuse them together to become a solid panel.
And how do you fuse them?
Well, you fuse them by taking them up to a temperature of about 1500 degrees. If I put all of these together in a kiln, say like this, and took it up to 1500 degrees, it would all sort of melt out and come out as one piece of glass.
So that's how you mix colors.
That's exactly how you mix colors.
I see.
And in fact, when you get back to my art, what I do is I start with a solid piece of glass usually. Then I start taking components. For example, this is a birch tree.
And she made this. That doesn't come like that way.
Right. I fused this first. This was made with a white strip of glass and a clear strip of glass that has black markings on it. And I put a whole bunch of these, probably 10 or 12 at a time, in the kiln. I heat them up to about 1500 degrees and hold it for a few minutes. And when I come out, they're solid pieces of glass like this. When I'm making my art, I take components that I've made like this and I add them to a composition. I use a lot of crushed glass in between them, which kind of keeps them all apart. A lot of clear crushed glass, and then I fuse it, and it becomes a solid panel of glass.
Oh, this is how you call it, fusing.
Right, fusing.
I see.
Right.
And also she said that, you know, she has to put in the kiln so many times, you know, because they are in layers. So the one layer has to go to about like at 24 hours or so. So each piece it takes, like how many days, you know, to finish?
The larger pieces can take 2 or 3 weeks to do. Because you have to do a background and you fire it, and that takes anywhere around 24 to 30 hours, and then you add another layer. So I start from the background and work to the foreground in a scene.
Do you know, when you start doing the piece, for example, do you know what is going to look like? Or it could happen that you make the mistakes. So what do you do if you, for example, I'm sure, you know, this is a very delicate thing, and especially, you know, glass, you know, once it gets hard, you cannot do anything about it. That's what I think, I don't know. And how do you redo it? Can you redo it?
To some extent. There are things that you can do. You can't really redo it. You can break it. You know, you can start over again. Sometimes.
Oh, you could reuse it. Okay,
right, you could reuse it. The landscapes that I do, I generally have an idea in my head as to what it's going to look like. Sometimes I even work from photographs because people will send me photographs and ask me to make them for them in glass. But what I do is I start with the background and then I create, for example, on that one over there, I start with the sky. And then the next layer has the mountains and the lake on it. And then the next layer has one set of trees. And then I can keep adding more trees. I can add foliage. If I don't like how one of the trees is acting, I can maybe add some leaves in front of it later. So there is a lot of...
It's a variation.
It's a variation on things. No two pieces can possibly be alike.
So it's a one-of-a-kind, you know, a one-of-a-kind.
And glass moves when it fuses and melts. So sometimes things move in odd directions, and that can be a very happy accident, or it can wreck the piece.
Well,
so you try to work with what you have and use what comes out to the best
So
of the
what did you say?
advantage.
You said that some people, customers of yours, are sending you picture of what, for example, they would like to be done in, art glass.
Well, for example, some people sent me, a woman sent me a picture that she had taken in Alaska. And it was a beautiful mountainscape with a
like
lake,
landscape.
misty lakes in the foreground, and it had a lot of pine trees.
Uh-huh.
But she didn't like the fact that there were so many pine trees in front. So she asked me if I could make that, but without so many pine trees.
Without that, I see.
So it's always a stylized version. It's, I can't produce photographic images.
Of course.
But you can, if you know that you want the mountains here and you want the lake here and you want certain kinds of trees here. We used to also make houses for people. People would send me a picture of their house.
Oh.
And we would do
just the front of the house.
It's not
three-dimensional.
Right, but we'd put their little fences out there. We'd do their gardening for them. And, their porch, and if they had stained glass window, we can put that in. So they look very much like little images of houses.
Wow, interesting. And who are your clients usually? Younger people, older people, in between? Who is admirer of your talented, work?
We get a lot of people. I would say most are probably late 20s, 30s, into their 40s. I have a woman client who's some 88 years old, and she purchased one of my pieces, so it runs the full spectrum.
It varies. Uh-huh.
It often depends on the subject matter. People will see my work from across the room, and some piece will talk to them, and you can see them just making a beeline for it, and they'll say, that's the piece.
Do you do portraits?
I do not do people so far. I've done a few cats and a few animals.
Oh, really?
But no, getting the gradations and the shadings in the face with the colors that I have to work with is very difficult. And most of the colors that you would use for skin tones tend to be reactive. So if you put them against other kinds of glass,
it will not look real.
Right. I'm sure there are some people who do it, but they may use more of a painting technique than I do. I don't paint. Everything is made from little pieces of glass.
But this is even more difficult, to do, because, the painting, you can repaint easily over it, but this is something, the glass is already hardened, and you cannot, repair it so quickly. But it's interesting that she's doing like a small landscapes, as you can see here. And also the largest pieces, this is for display, on the left, that you have these blue, this is something for your display, or you call it sculpture? Or what
it would be called sculpture.
Sculpture.
It's three-dimensional. It's got the rocks and the layers. People could put it up, for example, on a console table or a buffet table or something.
And also she uses some stones. Do you polish the stones? How do you find them? Just look for it?
These stones I actually purchased at a garden center, but then you have to use a rock saw. I don't want that to move.
So how did you cut it? You have to have a special, cutting equipment to do it.
Right. It's called a tile saw. You can use it to cut rocks. You can use it to cut porcelain tiles and so forth.
Is it difficult to do it?
It requires technique and it requires strong hands. I actually had someone helping me do the larger rocks because they're so heavy. They're probably 25 pounds each. To hold them and steer them in the tile saw takes a very steady, strong hand to do that.
Did you know that this piece is going to be like that when you start doing it, or you just, while you were working, you got the idea this is going to be kind of sculpture on the desk?
I knew I wanted a waterfall, and I knew that I was going to do the background with the strips of glass that are actually, they're rods of glass made in a vitrograph. And I knew that I was going to do the water making bubbles. Those are actually made out of murini, which I can make. And murini, you probably know more as millefiori. They're the little things that are made in Italy. People put them in jewelry a lot.
On jewelry,
right.
I see.
Now I can actually make these. This is a specialized kiln, It goes up over your head. Small kiln, goes up over your head. It's made with fire bricks. It's just like maybe a 12 by 12 box. It looks like from the outside. But it has a hole in the bottom.
Oh.
And I put in the kiln, I get a flower pot, a ceramic flower pot. I fill it up with glass. And how I organize the glass is important. Then I set it in this kiln and heat it up to about 1600 degrees. Then the glass will start flowing out the bottom of the kiln.
Like a liquid.
Like liquid. And depending on what you do, you can twist things, you can turn things as it's coming out.
Yeah, I can see the different color, like a swirl around.
Right. These, actually, you can see there's kind of a different center. If I put the glass in a certain way, then I start to get concentric holes. These are the ones that I slice to make the bubbles, which I then, so I have to assemble all of those, then fuse them together so it becomes a solid piece of glass.
So did you invent that?
I did not invent the technique. A guy named Nathan Sandberg invented the technique, and I was fortunate enough to take a class with him a couple of years ago. But I've adapted his technique. I do believe this is the first kind of piece where somebody's actually taken his technique
I see.
and made something other than, say, a dish out of it.
So do you have I'm sure by now you perfected your art, but it's always something new is coming up. So do you have to refresh to go to some classes because, they're all offering different technique, maybe to learn something to add to what you are already doing?
Exactly. There are different glass artists around the world who have become famous for certain techniques.
I see.
I try when it's possible to take classes from them, not so I can copy their technique, but so that I can adapt it to what I do.
I see.
And so, there have been a number of different classes that I've taken. There was a woman in Italy. I took a class from Miriam De Fiore. Her pieces start around $8,000 or $10,000 and go up. So it's really interesting because these people have worked for years and years and years to perfect one little technique. And then I can take that
so
technique.
You can adapt some of it to your technique, to improve your whatever you are doing. I see. Well, when you buy the glass, do the glass come like in just a clear without anything? For example, you have all of these that you already made it, and she said she cuts these strips and fuse. I just learned new word today. You fuse the different, glass colors, so you get something like that different. But anyway, she can demonstrate how she can cut the glass. It looks easy, but I'm sure it's not. You have to know really what are you doing.
Like anything, it takes practice. The glass comes in colors.
They come in colors, like in big sheets, or how do you buy it?
They come in big sheets.
I see.
You can also buy rods of glass. This isn't a rod, but it's about the thickness of a rod. And I can buy glass in that's like crushed glass. It comes in different sizes and colors.
Oh, they're very small.
Well, and those are the large pieces.
Oh, really?
The finer glass comes.
So when do you put this very fine, like this little, almost like a, I don't know, the smallest beads possible?
It's ground up things. I can also get powdered glass.
And do you put them, on the big piece of glass so they can melt and make the colors? Is that how you do it?
That's exactly one of the things that I do. If you look at the garden piece up to your right, a lot of that is actually frit that was added. It's called frit, this crushed glass.
And this is, for example, you do this in stages, and this is one of the last stages, to finish the painting.
Exactly.
I call it painting. I don't know because you didn't paint, but it looks like a painting.
Technically, they're called frit paintings.
What's it called?
Frit painting, F-R-I-T.
Frit? Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Frit.
We're learning today so much, you wouldn't believe it, about new art. I mean, to me it's new, but, for her it's not. When everything looks so easy, but it, sounds so complicated and, needs lots of years of practice to do something like that. And also, I would like you to show this, your piece of jewelry that she actually doesn't do it on, this is just one piece that she did for herself, something to reward herself for all hard work she's doing.
It's made with what's called dichroic glass. The background layer is black. The dichroic glass is glass that was developed by NASA for the space program.
Oh.
It's very expensive glass, but it is entered into the art glass field. So you see a lot of things.
How do you get it? You know, how do you know?
It comes actually. It comes in circles. And sheets, and it has textures sometimes. So it can be transparent, so you just see colors through it, or it can be it can be on a black background, so that the colors really pop out at you.
But on the back is different. You know, I just saw. You know, the front is different.
The back is just a piece of black glass.
Black glass.
Then I put the dichroic glass in there, and this is several different pieces of dichroic glass. They're different
colors. And how long
colors.
took you to finish that piece?
These I can do, I would say, 4 or 5 a week, because you have to. It goes through 3 firings, right? You have to fire the dichroic, then you have to put the glass on top of it, then you have to cut the shape, then you have to polish the shape, then you have to refire it again and do final polishing. So it
also you had to put the metal in, you know, before, you know, afterwards or before.
Right. Well, no, the metal comes on afterwards.
Afterwards. So this is the last thing, you know, you have to do.
Right.
I see. Okay, can you show us how you cut the glass?
I can.
You know, it looks, you know, so easy, but
this is a piece of glass. It's about 3 millimeters thick.
It comes in this color.
It comes in this color. It comes in a whole range of colors. There's probably
it does.
300 or 400 colors. And this is a diamond or a carbon. It's a really hard cutting wheel. What it does is it scores the glass, which is basically.
So you're
like
doing freehand?
I also have straight edge things that I can do it. You can do it in curves to some extent, like that. And then to break it, and this is just one way of cutting glass. There's a lot of different ways. I just squeeze this here, and these pliers sort of press on the outside of the crack and causes the glass to sometimes break along the crack or not. So it takes a little bit of experiment.
Well, I'm sure, you know, it looks so easy. I know if I would do it, I'll break it a million pieces.
If I need just little chips of glass, I can cut them like that.
I see. Well, look at that, you know.
So there are a number of different tools. I have a saw that cuts out very delicate shapes.
Oh, wow. It's with a saw?
Yeah, it's a saw with a little, it's called a ring saw. It has a circular blade, and it allows you to, it's very thin, so it allows you to move the glass around in the saw and cut out the...
And how do you treat the surface of the glass?
Usually, when I'm making a piece, I don't need to treat it. But if I want, for example, a glossy finish, like there is on that piece, then I fire it a second time. I sandblast it, the finished piece, then I fire it a second time, and it becomes really glossy. If I want more of a matte finish,
I see.
I sandblast it, and then I hand polish it with silicon carbide to get that kind of nice, soft, velvety matte
I see.
finish.
So did you all learn this through some classes, or did you by, you know, just doing and, you know, making mistakes and then you correcting yourself?
There was a lot of trial and error at the beginning. There's so many little things you have to learn about glass. The colors in glass are all made by chemical elements, like sulfur and cadmium and copper and gold and so forth. And so if you mix some glasses that have elements that would have a reaction, then sometimes you get a very unpredictable result. There is, for example...
And sometimes it's probably, you know, but mistake makes something fabulous.
Exactly. This is one that really shows the reactions well. This is a piece of cream-colored glass, like that, and I put a little triangle of silver foil on it.
Foil?
Silver foil. The sulfur in the glass reacts with the silver foil and causes all of this blue...
So do you leave it there? You left it there, or you left it there?
Right. I put it in the kiln.
So this is the shiner.
I fired it in the kiln,
Uh-huh.
I fired it in the kiln. I put the silver piece on the piece of glass, and I fired it in the kiln.
So it will not burn, you know, the foil?
No,
on that temperature. I know it will not, but on that temperature, I mean, it's just...
So if it's thick enough, it does not. You can't use silver leaf and gold leaf very well.
Oh.
But the foil tends to hold up.
Interesting. And I'm sure the foil comes also in the different thickness, and you're using probably the thickest one possible that you get.
You use the one that's available. We buy all of our materials through glass making.
But this is specially made for, you know, something like that. This is not the like that we have in the kitchen, our foil.
No.
Yeah, okay, well, that's explained.
Well, you can try that. In fact, there are things that you can do with aluminum foil and copper foil to get interesting and weird things. Copper foil, for example, turns into a dark maroon when you fire it.
And how do you heat up the glass? How do you heat up? What do you do to heat up?
There's different ways. In the kiln, there are elements around the outside of it. And so once you turn the kiln on, it's controlled by a computer that says, okay, I want to increase the temperature at, say, 100 degrees per hour. And so you take it up.
Slowly heats up.
With glass, you have to generally slowly heat it up and slowly bring it back down again.
This is, you learn this just for, you know, making it. You probably, nobody told you that, you know, you have to do it this way, you know.
You get what they call a kiln schedule that has 5 or 6 different steps in it that the computer can do. And every piece has its own kind of kiln schedule. These, for example, go up to, I think, 1,525 degrees, and they get held at that temperature for 45 minutes. Some of these just go up to maybe 1490 degrees and only get held for 10 minutes. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve.
So you have to be on your toes all the time, you know, to watch, you know, you have to turn it on, turn it off, you know. And where do you show your art? You know, this is very important so people can see and really enjoy and buy, of course. You know, where do you show? Do you go to craft shows? Or?
I do some craft shows. I belong to the Northern Virginia Handcrafters Guild, and they have a couple of shows per year, and I show in those. I'm also with the National Capital Art Glass Guild, and they frequently have a couple of shows.
Just for glass artists.
Right, just for glass artists. I'm in a gallery out in Middleburg, the Byrne Gallery. There's some other shows that are kind of for higher end craft. I was just in the American Fine Craft Show that was in DC. That was about 2 weeks ago. A couple of years ago, I did the American Craft Council show, which was up in Baltimore.
Did you ever apply to Smithsonian?
I have applied to Smithsonian, but they get several thousand applicants, and they only have about maybe
I'm sure
100,
limited number, of course, of people.
So I will continue to apply from time to time, but I think it helps if you build up a presence, in some other galleries.
Well, as you can see, what people from our area are doing, you know, wonderful thing. And I think we learned today a thing or two about making glass. Of course, we are not going to even try to do it, but at least we can appreciate her work and all this beautiful design that she's doing. And I'm very appreciative that, you know, she came today to show us. And also I want to tell you that you can see some of our show on YouTube. If you type Olga Jevtich Fashion Notes, you can see some of our shows. And, you know, as you know, we have a different artists, different designers, doctors for beauty advice, and, you know, dentists, all kind of, you know, different interesting things. And I'm really thankful that you came today. You know, she took some time to display all these beautiful things. And I hope you appreciate her, you know, coming and showing us all these lovely, lovely things. And I hope you tune in again for another wonderful, talented, you know, designer or craftsperson from our area.